The place was England. The people are the Pilgrims. They are poor and ordinary, but their story is so important that almost 400 years later, we still tell it. It started with a ruthless king. The king had declared that everyone in his kingdom had to belong to his religion and worship in his way. The Pilgrims, however, had other ideas about how they wanted to worship.
You have to try my way. No, you have to try my way. No, you're going to break my way. No, you have to try my way.
The king was insistent. He had spies all over the kingdom and even sent soldiers to harm and imprison those who did not do as he commanded. This made the Pilgrims very unhappy. They decided to leave England and go to a new land where they could worship as they pleased. This land was called America. Turkey! So the Pilgrims told their friends about finding a new home. And together they traveled across the Atlantic Ocean on a ship called the Mayflower. They set off for America. They had given up their houses and said goodbye to their friends, families, and England too. The Mayflower was on its way. There were mothers, fathers, sisters, and brothers, as well as 34 little children on board, totaling over 100 people on the ship. It was a rough and dangerous voyage. There were terrible storms that rocked the ship back and forth, and many of the Pilgrims became sick. After more than 2 months at sea, and just when things looked their worst, the Pilgrims saw something in the distance. Finally, the Pilgrims had arrived to America. What a thrilling sight. They had reached their new home. The Pilgrims saw a sandy beach and many trees. America looked wild and strange. Was it safe? Indians were sighted nearby hiding in the forest and were frightened by the Pilgrims and ran away. Were the Indians friends or enemies? The Pilgrims will soon find out which. Turkey! fresh water flows into a harbor. A big rock marked the landing. There were large trees and plenty of open land to plant crops. The Pilgrims decided to make this their new home and call it New Plymouth. The Pilgrims begin a new life in a strange new land. There is so much they need to do. The Pilgrims had to build houses before they could even leave the ship. And it was winter time. Bad weather slowed them down. It took several weeks just to finish one house. During that first harsh winter, the snow fell fast and thick, and the wind was icy, and there was hardly enough food to eat. Almost everyone became sick, and many pilgrims died. The small pilgrim band grew smaller and smaller each passing day. By the end of the bitter winter, only about half of the pilgrims that made the trip were still alive. The pilgrims buried their dead at night in secret graves hidden by the dark. The Indians must not discover how few pilgrims were left and how weak those few were. Turkey!
Gobble, 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 I'm full.
The long, sad winter passed, and spring finally arrived. Indians were sighted near the settlement. They came closer, and closer, and closer. Then, one day an Indian walked right into the settlement. The pilgrims were terrified, but the Indian stopped, smiled, and said, in a flash, Samoset returned with another Indian named Squanto, who also spoke English even better than he did.
I'll teach you how to fish and play corn.
Squanto liked the pilgrims so much, he decided to live with them and show them how to survive in the harsh wilderness of the New World. He showed them how to fish and hunt wild game. He also taught them how to plant corn the Indian way. As time passed, the Indians and the pilgrims learned to trust each other and became good friends. A treaty was made between the pilgrims and the Indians that promised no harm to each other and a peace that would endure for many, many years. Turkey!
Gobble, 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 I'm full.
Back in the Indian village, Samoset and Squanto arrived with the news of the treaty, and they and the rest of their tribe celebrated this peace with their new friends the Pilgrims by doing a traditional Native American celebration dance.